Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 21, The Druses, Book Four Ishmaelites, from Secret Societies of All Ages, Volume 1 by Charles William Heckethorn. 4. The Druses, 157, Origin of Sect of Druses. The Ishmaelites of Egypt and Syria may be found even to this day in some of the sects of Islam. Their primitive physiognomy reveals itself but faintly, but their profile is seen in the lineaments of some of the heretical families wandering in the wilderness or on Mount Lebanon, objects of inquietude to the Turkish government, of wonder to travelers, and of study to science. Of these, the Druses, living in Northern Syria and possessing about 40 towns and villages, are perhaps the most remarkable. Their sect may be said to date its rise from the supposed incarnation of God in Hakem Biamr Allah, publicly announced at Cairo in 1020. This Hakem was the 6th Caliph of Egypt, and Druses, his confessor, took an active part in promoting the imposture, which, however, was at first so badly received that he was compelled to take refuge in the deserts of the Lebanon, where, receiving liberal pecuniary support from Hakem, he found hearers among the Arabs and soon made converts. According to other accounts, Druses was killed for preaching his doctrine, and thus became the first martyr to the new religion. A footing thus gained, correspondence was opened with Egypt, and Hamza, a Persian mystic and vizier of Hakem, who had from the first been a zealous supporter of Hakem's divinity, hastened to avail himself of the favorable opening. 10 years did not elapse before the two clever rogues or fiery fanatics had converted nearly all the Arab tribes inhabiting the Lebanon, while one portion of them was set apart and initiated into the mysteries of the doctrines of Hamza. But he did not give his name to the sect. By a natural etymology, the disciples of Druses, the first teacher, obtained the name of Druses, though they rejected and called themselves Unitarians. We may thus look upon the Fatimite Caliph Hakem, the Persian Hamza, and the Turk Druses as the founders of the Druze system, Hakem being its political founder, Hamza its intellectual framer, and Druses its expositor and propagator. 158. Religious Books of the Druses. Hamza associated with himself 4 assistants, to whom, as well as to himself, he gave high-sounding names. He called himself, for instance, Universal Reason, the Center, the Messiah of Nations, Jesus the United, that is, he who is ever united with the God, Hakem. He had, moreover, 159 disciples who went about preaching. The Druses called their religious books the sittings of the rulers and their learned men. They are comprised in 6 volumes. The first has the title The Diploma, the second The Refutation, the third The Awakening, the fourth the first of the 7 parts, the fifth The Staircase, and the 6th The Reproaches. In 1817, the Druses obtained a 7th volume from a Christian who alleged to have found it in an Egyptian school, and which they called the Book of the Greeks. 159. Murder of Hakem. Hakem was one of the most cruel monsters on record, a Saracenic Nero. Amidst carnage and the most revolting persecutions, he spread his doctrine. But in Egypt, where he resided, his heresy outraged the true believers, and his savagery the whole people. Sit el-Mulk, his own sister, headed the malcontents, and one evening when, according to his custom, he took his ride on a white ass, she caused him to be assassinated by some trusty followers, who, after having dispatched him with their daggers, undressed him and securely concealed the naked body. They then carefully fastened up his clothes again by order of his sister, who did not wish the belief in his divinity to be destroyed. At last, when the caliph did not return, and those sent to look for him returned with the news that they had found his clothes but not his body, it was said that Hakem had simply rendered himself invisible to test the faith of his followers and to punish apostates on his return. And the Druses, to explain the miracle, say that Hakem possessed a body of a more subtle substance than the usual human body, and could go forth out of his clothes without opening or tearing them. The dagger cuts in them are explained away as mysterious indications of certain purposes of their deity. 160. Hakem's successor. Hakem left 2 sons, but the sect did not acknowledge them as such. Ali es-Sahir, who succeeded his father as caliph, is reported to have said to Hamza, "Worship me as you worshipped my father." But Hamza replied, "Our Lord, who be praised, neither begat nor was he begotten." Ali replied, "Then I and my brother are illegitimate?" Hams answered, "You have said it and borne testimony against yourself." Thereupon the enraged Ali ordered the wholesale murder of the Unitarians unless they returned to the true Muslim faith. Those who refused were either slain or fled to Syria to their co-religionists. Ali, to conciliate the people, who had by his father's despotism and oppression been greatly embittered against his dynasty, gave up all title to divine honors and the rights it implied. 161. Doctrines. The Druses believe in the transmigration of souls, but probably it is merely a figure, as it was to the Pythagoreans. Hakem is their prophet, and they have 7 commandments, religious and moral. The first of these is veracity, by which is understood faith in the Unitarian religion they profess, and the abhorrence of that lie which is called polytheism, incredulity, error. To a brother, perfect truth and confidence are due, but it is allowable, nay, a duty to be false towards men of another creed. The sect is divided into 3 degrees: profanes, aspirants, and wise. A Druse who has entered the second may return to the first degree, but incurs death if he reveal what he has learned. In their secret meetings, they are supposed to worship a calf's head. But as their religious books are full of denunciations against idolatry, and as they also compare Judaism, Christianity, and Mohammedanism to a calf, it is more probable that this effigy represents the principle of falsehood and evil, Iblis, the rival and enemy of Hakem. The Druses have also been accused of licentious orgies, and are said by Besbier in his remarks on Rico, an English diplomatist, d. 1700, to marry their own daughters. But according to the evidence of resident Christians, a young Druse, as soon as he is initiated, gives up all dissolute habits and becomes, at least in appearance, quite another man, meriting, as in other initiations, the title of newborn. The initiated are known by the appellation of occels and form a kind of priesthood in the midst of the general population. According to their traditions, the world was at the appearance of God in the form of Hakem, 3,430 million years old, and they believe, like the Chiliasts of England and America, that the millennium is close at hand. The wise often retire into hermitages, whereby they acquire great honor and influence. When discoursing with a Mohammedan, the Druses profess to be of the same creed. When talking with a Christian, they are Christians. They defend this deception by alleging that it is not lawful to reveal any dogma of their creed to a black or unbeliever, and their secrecy with regard to their religion has led them to adopt signs and passwords, such as are in use among Freemasons and other secret societies. When in doubt whether a stranger with whom they conversed belonged to their sect, they would ask, "Do people in your part of the country sow balm seed?" If the other replied, "Yes, it is sown in the hearts of the faithful," he probably was a co-religionist, but he might be an aspirant only, and therefore they would question him further as to some of the secret dogmas. If he did not understand the drift of their question, they would know that he was not initiated into the higher grades. But their signs and test words and phrases had frequently to be changed, their import having been discovered by the blacks, which happened especially when the extensive hermit village of Bajada, near Chasbaya, was destroyed in 1838 by the troops of Ibrahim Pasha, and the sacred books of the Druses were made publicly known. 162. Customs of the Druses. Every village has its meeting houses, where religious and political affairs are discussed every Thursday night, the wise men and women attending. The resolutions passed at such meetings are communicated to the district meetings, held in the chief village of every district, which again report to the General Assembly in the town of Baklin on Mount Lebanon. This was the fortified seat of government until, in this century, Deir el-Kama, the Moon Monastery, was built as the Lebanon metropolis. At the General Assembly, the questions raised at the district meetings are discussed, and the deputies from the different villages who have attended, on their return home, announced the decisions arrived at, so that the Druses, in fact, have a regular family council to which, however, the wise only are admitted, the uninitiated never being consulted in political or social matters. The civil government of the Druses is in the hands of the sheiks, who again are subject to the emir, or Prince of Lebanon. They are warlike and industrious, and 2 traits in their character deserve notice and commendation. They refuse to give up any man who has sought refuge amongst them, and detest the European tall hat, which they compare to a cooking pot and laugh at. In the days when Burckhardt visited them, One of their maledictions was, "May God put a hat on you." The number of Druses does not exceed 50 or 60,000, exclusively occupying in the Lebanon upwards of 40 large towns and villages, and nearly 230 villages with a mixed population of Druses and Christians, whilst in the anti-Lebanon they are also possessed of nearly 80 exclusively Druze villages. 163. Druses and Maronites. The Druses were frequently at war with the Maronites, a neighboring Christian sect, so called after Maro, its founder, circa 400 AD, originally fugitive monothelites who had settled on Mount Lebanon after the accession of Anastasius II, 496 through 98, who persecuted them as long as the Turkish government favored the Druses in order to keep down the influence of the Maronites. The former, though the less warlike people, generally prevailed against the latter, but when the ruling emir, Ben Shihab, with his family seceded from Mohammedanism and became Maronite Christians, the Maronites were for a time masters of the situation. In 1860, however, when the Maronites, for the promotion of Christianity, declared war against the Druses, Turkey again assisted the latter. True, the Porte afterwards changed sides and supported the Maronites, partly because Europe insisted on the Christians being protected, and partly because it suited Turkish policy to so protect them. For the Maronites had by that time been so weakened that Turkey considered the opportunity favorable to break the power of the Druses also. Since then, the latter are under a governor appointed by the Porte. 164. The Ansari or Nusayriya. This is another Syrian sect who worship a mystic triad consisting of Ali, Muhammad, and an early companion of the latter, Salman al-Farsi, whence their mystical name Ams, formed from the initial letters of the three names. This triad is ultimately resolved into light, or the sky, the sun and the moon, the first being illimitable, the second proceeding from the first, and the last proceeding from the other two. Their religion is largely made up of Christian, Jewish, and Mohammedan elements, but there cannot be a doubt that beneath them all are remnants of the old Sabsean faith. Some of their doctrines, which have become known, advocate the most licentious practices, especially between the priests and the female members of their congregations. They invoke the deity under extraordinary appellations, such as Prince of Bees, Lion, End of Ends. They are supposed to be the aborigines of Northern Syria, and to have remained in the mountain chain stretching from Mount Cassius to the Lebanon, while successive tides of conquest have swept along the valleys on either side. It is difficult to ascertain exactly the details of their religion, both because it is secret and ill-digested, and because few among them understand it, or have fixed points of agreement or disagreement. They number about 200,000, and derive their name from a sectary called Nusayri. Burckhardt, in his Travels in Syria and Palestine, gives some curious particulars concerning them, which will not bear transferring to these pages. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.